since I have recurred, and we are still near the end of grade -2, which I have decided to let last its full course that makes sense, 36 whole episodes, and all the bonus content that comes along with those, even though it did end up taking a little longer than a year that some people assume a school grade would take. And since we do have a few more episodes of that, and a number of other cool little bonus things like shorts and stuff, which I'll explain more about in a minute, we are still at the extra disheveled state. We are at just about grade -2 and 8/9. Or if you had started your count a little differently, some would say that we have done -1 and 8/9 grades, which is how many we have been in our classroom for. But there is a grade 0 period, some rare lore that will slowly be emerged in footage I do have. And our grades started at 1, like many systems begin their counting, a little more bijective maybe. And so our system does treat it we are at grade, I guess we could call it -26 ninths. That is about what grade we are at. And today, I wanted to check in about some things, because it's been a while since I had posted anything on this channel, and while I do some introductory chatting, first I just wanted to have a nice larger picture for a moment so we can see our classroom here, despite its disheveled state. Like, that is actually the desk down there. I don't even know if you can see you'll see what happened to the desk. And I am also in a bit of a disheveled state as well. This is the same haircut I gave myself a little over a year ago in the last grades finale, and I decided, why not see how long my hair and beard will get if I don't cut them. There was a couple things sticking out that I may have trimmed, like a side one, but I didn't cut the length of it at any point in the last 14 months or something, since I cut it pretty short myself. And I wanted to see how long it grew, and that was an experiment we got, but I had kind of subtly promised myself that I wasn't going to cut it again until around the grade -2 finale, and that has taken a while. So I am at one of the longer hair points I've ever been in, although there was one point in middle school when I was like 12 when my hair was slightly longer than this, if you don't count the beard. If you add up the beard, maybe we are at our peak. And I will be chatting with our comments while we go through some various themes. For now, let me shrink myself as well so we can look at some cool things like graphs. And here, I'm not sure if this is actually showing it right. It might be frozen on the page. It does that sometimes, because that's not actually what the page is supposed to be showing. So, let's fix that. I need to make a new background one. We're just going to be fiddling around with some graphs as our beginning background thing. There's a few other things I wanted to show on the screen later, but playing around with graphs is always fun, and I found an interesting one here. If you see the shape that's there currently, take a moment to think. You see that white square there. What can you notice about the coordinates of that white square there? And maybe you see a hint of another white square on the side as well. And do you think they continue? And what could we maybe guess about their coordinates? Now, that first white square in particular, we can notice some things about. And let me actually so I can fiddle with the graph. As my combo lords know, I'm not a technological master. And in fact, I've been having some tech issues recently. And I have a backdrop of things filmed that will be uploaded throughout this week and other things throughout the next month that are already filmed, but I wasn't able to edit or upload for various reasons. There have been various slightly chaotic things happening in my personal life. I won't go into too many details about today. Some of those you may have to wait until I write my memoirs. Others you may get to hear about in the grade -2 finale. Because in our grade -2 finale, there will be a lot of behind-the-scenes content that was not seen from this grade. Even on the weeks where you don't see me uploading as much, there is a lot of filming I do, and I collect these things for particular episode topics. And a lot of the episode topics that didn't end up meriting a whole combo class episode will get a section in the finale. So here's what it should have been. This is the editable one. And what I had here when I made that wacky shape in the background was one graph of when sine of x to the y is less than or equal to what looks the same, but the parentheses a bit different, and two x's. So sine of x to the y altogether is less than or equal to, as usual, this was just something I fiddled around with and found that it looked cool, and less than or equal to sine of x and that to the x. Then this is the same thing, but with y to the y there. That's going to give us some interesting symmetry. And we can also see that now we're looking at points where sine of x to the y is less than or equal to one of these. And that's the light green points. And the lines are when it's equal to one of those. And the darker greens are when it's less than or equal to both of them. So that's a fun backdrop to fiddle around with, and as usual, one of our friends in numbers popped up. As far as I can tell, unless it's a random coincidence, the coordinates of this square to me certainly look like pi by pi, tau, pi's friend, twice pi, by tau, and pi by tau and tau by pi. And so this square, although it's not circular, has our circular friend in it. So this is just to fiddle around with as a little introductory backdrop while I fill you guys in on some other updates. Like I said, there will be some shorts coming out on this channel this week, and as for the next main combo class episode, because I do need to go here a second to remind everyone, this is my bonus channel, even though it has more subscribers, and make sure that you see my full episodes that are more of my passion projects on my combo class channel. I love this channel too, but I spend extra time on the episodes on this channel. And these ones are the newer ones, such as a crazy coconut field trip snack break, and the latest one, which was an insane world of Polygon packings. Some people may have seen one or two of these square ones as a cursed packing of squares, and I looked further down the rabbit hole of which other squares had been cataloged, as well as other shapes, and they're pretty wacky. And that was one other thing that I thought would be fun to poke around with today, was looking at some more of those wacky packings. These are some collected by one of the main people I credited in that episode, Eric. I forget his last name, but it's here somewhere. And some of these were by David Ellsworth. He made higher def images of some of the squares, and he also tracked some things that I cited about the evolution of what had been discovered about the squares. And neither of these people were the discoverer of, I don't know if they discovered any, certainly not most, of these shapes, because we can also see citations for who found these things, like, there's a good way to pack 5 squares, and there's our details. Now, these squares were already shown to a decent degree in my episode explaining them. So if we're poking around here, we'll poke around some other shapes. But let me take a moment to look at our comments, because I did say that our stream today is about chatting about things, and although I put chatting about the past month, like I said, I'm going to be a little vague for now about some difficult things I've been having to work my way through that are mostly settled over the past month, related to a variety of things, from, you know, little medical things to little family things to little life survival things, and so on. So, and little technology annoyances and such. But I should have a good amount of time going forward to edit and post a lot of the cool stuff that I have been filming. Now, somebody asked here, do I have a favorite platonic solid? I'm gonna have to go tetrahedron. Now, there's a lot of good platonic solids out there. Cubes, of course, are cool. I wouldn't say they're my favorite. I would say there's something special about some of the others, like dodecahedrons are kind of unique that they have pentagons as their faces. But it's all about the tetrahedron, baby, the simplest. It's the 3D triangle. And, we are going to have episodes that go into 4D triangles and 5D triangles. And when the natural time for a lot of our triangular themed episodes will be? Well, triangles have 3 sides, so that would have to be grade -3. You see, grade -3, we are going to embrace the 3 of the absolute value of the grade. We are going to talk a lot about triangles, musical triads, 3-even things, and other 3-related subjects. Now, hypertriangles, as I like to think of different dimensions of triangles, will certainly be included. And if anyone wants to do any fun research on your own that sent me down a crazy rabbit hole, that will be an episode somewhere in the grade. If you've ever heard of Pascal's triangle, that is a triangle of numbers, and that also is a very classic triangle that we will talk about in the grade. But take a think, if you haven't encountered this before, or you can wait until it shows up in the grade, of how does Pascal's triangle also relate to 3D and 4D triangles and platonic solid shapes in different dimensions. The triangles relate to the triangles in a lot of ways. So I gotta go tetrahedron. Now, let's see. Somebody did guess pi and 2 pi. Yep. And somebody guessed some other classic constants. And somebody said, do I spurn the fact of shorts' current supremacy in garnering views? Well, making shorts is a kind of complicated thing in a way because it's a popular modern phenomena that can get you a lot of views really quickly because random people will see your short and not have to click on it. If your short gets a lot of views and a lot of watch time, it'll just go onto other people's screens when they're on the shorts tab. And other videos, they have to click the video. And I don't want to give my videos super clickbaity titles or thumbnails. So, they have to click the video usually if they're like interested in whatever mathematical concept I'm talking about in the video or something. And with the shorts, it might just pop on their screen. Maybe I'm engaging enough. They stay for most of the minute and the watch time sends it to someone else. The thing is, a lot of those viewers do not stick around quite as well. They're not as diehard fans automatically. A subscriber from a main video would be, worth more in some sense, although it's hard to quantify how much more than a subscriber from shorts. So you don't want to put all your eggs in that basket. If you don't want to get 1 million views from shorts before you've made any long videos that you get people watching, because that, then you're playing a gamble and hoping that they end up actually watching that. But unless you don't care. I mean, you just don't want shorts to be your long-term way of gathering a die-hard fan base necessarily. And they also provide far less revenue in general. But shorts have done very well for me. I'm very grateful for how many people YouTube has put some of my shorts on the pages of. There are many with millions of views, which is absurd and awesome. And those do really help me get people, to learn my face and name and what I'm about and maybe click on my other stuff. And even if they're just on the shorts tab, then, if they watch them, they'll see the next shorts probably. And the thing for me is that I don't really watch shorts. And they're not my form of content to digest. I am a YouTube long-form horizontal watcher. That's like the main thing I watch. Like, if I'm chilling out in the evening, a lot of the time I'll have 2 things open on my laptop. I'll like half be working on some type of document that I've been working on earlier, but now I'm like winding down a little bit. I'm half working on writing something and half watching something on YouTube. And if that's what I pretty much only watch. Occasionally I'll watch nature shows. Occasionally I'll watch comedy shows or cartoons. I don't really watch movies or stuff. I watch a lot of YouTube. And so as a fan of that, I enjoy making that. I feel more proud of my long-form horizontal videos on my Combo Class channel particularly. But shorts are their own challenge that are fun. To make an idea extra concise, fit it into a minute, make it catchy in its own way, still teach something within a minute. And so they're fun in their own weird, challenging way. I go through phases where I'm less inspired to be like worried if I make a short. Sometimes I'll be like, I want to make a short every day. Sometimes I'll go a week or two without filming one. Whereas I'm pretty much always working on a few horizontal videos at a given time. So the shorts aren't my main thing, but they worked so well and were a unique challenge that I like doing them. I stalled out on them a little bit recently, but I do have a bountiful amount of ideas written down for them. And I do have about 5 or 10 filmed ready to post soon. And beyond that 5 or 10, I have hundreds of ideas for them written down. So I definitely will get back to filming more shorts soon. As was the case a little bit ago, I still need to get sort of my communication with others together a little more and start collaborating with more people who work on editing. I haven't been good at responding to people's emails or reaching out to people or stuff like that recently. But if I work with more editors, I'll be able to put out things like shorts far more consistently because I have more than enough ideas or willingness to set up the set to film them compared to my desire to edit and post one every day. For example, I used to post the shorts on TikTok as well, and the recent shorts I haven't even posted on there, even though I have a decent following on there because I just don't use that app. I don't know. But, I mean, I use it to post on occasionally, but I haven't recently. So, I don't know. That's a long-winded answer to how shorts can get you viewers in a way that long-form content can't. But don't put all your eggs in that basket. And they're not my personal favorite, but I like them being a part of my catalog. And I have found that they happen to be something I'm decently good at, that people will watch my shorts somehow. So they will continue. Now, somebody said the icosahedron is the underdog. Somebody else said the tetrahedron is a self-dual. Yes, and that was covered a bit in one of my older combo class episodes called the Mysterious Hyperdice Sequence. We will return to that later for higher dimensional shapes. But yes, self-duals are something interesting about all of the hyper triangles, such as how I called the tetrahedron the 3D triangle. Now, somebody mentioned, how did I come up with the theme of each video slowly unraveling? Kind of like physical comedy gags, but setting focused. Well, I would say some of it just sort of happened and I rolled with it because it's an outdoor classroom. So I'll get new furniture, like a new desk, and I'll get a new lab coat at the beginning of each grade. And between that time, I get rips in the lab coat and stains in the lab coat. The desk gets rained on and stuff. A lot of the new clocks I buy end up shattering or breaking or molding or stuff like that. And so some of it nature just does, and I roll with. Other parts of it are that I like a seasonal sort of vibe. I see combo class to a degree like a TV show, and this is actually the behind the scenes channel of the TV show, if anything, or the bonus content version of it. But I like to see it like a TV show that evolves over a season and then you get a reset. And it's fun to have a reset and it feels refreshing. And, you know, I'll get to cut my hair and get a new lab coat and experience that and experience being cleaner. And right now I experience being a little more disheveled. And so I get to ride all types of the cycle. And things do work seasonally in life. You know, you get winters and summers and bigger scale seasonal things on our lifetimes and smaller scale ones with the days passing and stuff. And so seasonal things and cycles are very important, and cycles that recur throughout history even, and throughout, you know, even past history that we can observe or know, will recur as a theme in combo class, as well as in the literature that I've been working on. There are a lot of and okay, I should be clicking around on this while I chat. I'm kind of tiny anyway. So we're just going to be looking at some of these while I continue to answer some questions. We're going to do squares and pentagons. Now, so I also thought it would be kind of funny. I like the chaos. So I do enjoy a little bit of chaos in my world, you know. Sometimes something shattering or something being on fire in a safe way, do not copy, is necessary for, you know, a little bit of laughter, a little bit of room for a new thing to grow in its place, and other emotions. And with the chaos, when it ensues, if I have an ongoing set, I accumulate things until the point where I'm like, I got to throw it away and get clean things. And some people would say that should be once a month or something, but I think it's a lot funnier when it's like once a year. And this time it was a little more than a year. Now, who knows what every grade will be like? That has been the theme so far. That will presumably continue being a theme in the next grade. But you never know. There could be an entire grade where I'm just in a cave in the woods. And maybe the whole grade I'm clean, or maybe the whole grade I'm dirty. I don't know. I'm not going to tie down my future too much. Apart from the fact that I will guarantee you guys that I love making these videos and other forms of content that I can't wait to put out connected to that, such as online digital resources, books, and, as I will discuss in a minute, games, that I will continue to keep you folks in the loop of all the cool learning that I think the world should know. And let's shift gears in a minute after I answer the rest of these comments to discuss what I was mentioning about games, because I have a few things about games I want to discuss as well. Now, somebody said Combo Class is the best math channel right now, and I'm the Prince of Chaos. Thank you. What a compliment. I love when our viewers help, prop up my ego a little bit. Sounds egotistical, of course, inherently. But I actually, despite being someone who acts kind of confident and cocky in certain ways, some people who act like that, it's sort of a shield that, they actually feel insecure in certain ways. And so they latch onto the things that they are very confident in. So I am actually, insecure in ways like any person. And it's awesome when I hear that people are inspired by my videos and stuff. So somebody said, am I going to do a cursed umbral calculus episode? Seems like the kind of thing I would enjoy. Yes, at some point I imagine that will probably come about. It's not something that I have any brainstorm notes written about at the moment. And I love writing random brainstorm notes about topics. And so there's more than enough topics that are already brainstormed. Those aren't always the ones that come out. Like the next episode on the Combo Class channel was kind of impromptu and random and inspired by a natural event that happened in the world. And I leave some gaps in the seasons for that on purpose. I don't plan every slot, so if something crazy happens, I always say, if lightning strikes the classroom, we're making an episode about lightning that week. And so I have to have a little wiggle room. But also, I have more than enough brainstorm notes that even all of grade -3 is sort of filled up, apart from the fact that many of those ideas will get pushed off till later and replaced with newer obsessions. Now, thank you to other people's questions. And somebody asked, where did I study and moments I chose this path. I will try and get to that question later. It's sort of something I've covered in some past streams, so if I can't get to that, feel free to ask again in a later one. I do want to discuss some things about games for a moment, but I'll see if I can get back to that later. And somebody asked about category theory as well. And it's not something I know deeply about. It's something that I've done surface level research on and found some really cool connections. And it is one of those things that combines many fields, where if you look at category theory, sometimes the definition you can make in that, sort of reminiscent of, if when we look at group theory, maybe before what would be classified as category theory, in group theory in particular, when we cover that, we'll see that some patterns in it explain a different pattern that we've seen before in a lot of different fields. Like they all secretly have this one pattern. And so category theory is kind of like that. I don't know enough about it to make an episode yet, but I imagine I will continue researching it at various points. Maybe someday I will know enough about it to make that episode. And now let's take a moment to discuss the games I was talking about. And, well, actually, no. First, I need to grab some water inside in 1 second. But first, I'm going to wrap up our weird shape stuff and note two things. One, This is a website that has a lot of it. Just look that up if you want to surf this stuff on your own. Super fun and cool and weird. Another note is that when we return to this, it will be looking at more 3D versions and higher dimensions, and in particular, sphere packing. Kind of like I said, a tetrahedron's a 3D triangle. A sphere is a 3D circle. And so, I mean, obviously these definitions in some contexts, you'd be like, that's not the right definition. But in many, many senses and in an underlying fundamental way, we can consider a circle as a shape that then has a 3D version, the sphere, a 4D version, the hypersphere, and so on. And how to pack these in different things is really interesting. Here they're showing cannonballs, which happens to have some interesting number theory traits, but also just the ways that we can fit them into, like, how many 4D spheres can fit into a box, of a higher dimension. Very interesting things emerge. Certain dimensions have strange traits. Now, that will probably be the next time we return to this. Maybe it'll be grade -3, because if we go for the absolute value of 3, 3D, third dimension. So, in a moment, I'm going to talk about some game stuff. I need to just grab some water real quick. And while I do that, why don't we try and put on an animated version of this? Here's what we'll do. We'll color this one a different color. We will put a variable in here. And we'll put a slider on the variable. And we'll try and make it go slow and hope it doesn't freak out the stream. We'll also give it a very small step. That'll make it inch slower. Alright, it's kind of glitchy, but it's probably going to look cool. I'll be back shortly. Leave any other questions you would like me to try and have time to answer in the stream. It'll be about an hour-long stream. The rest of the stuff I mostly want to talk about, apart from chatting about stuff, is a few different types of game and how they sort of culminated in the first sort of game that I'm going to try and publish. Oh my god, it's dark. I should have brought a flashlight. Alright, now to not trip on the desk, which is not its normal orientation or its old orientation. Hello, hopefully you enjoyed our glitchy screensaver thing made from these graphs. Thank you to everyone who has joined me for today's stream. And like I said, the next topic I want to talk about for a moment is some games. Now, I've always enjoyed games in a few different senses, and a lot of people enjoy digital, like video games. Those aren't my favorite ever, but a good game could maybe have a digital version. Like, you could play checkers or play a digital checkers. And I do like simple games of that sort that are another sort, in addition to a digital game, one that can be physical, like a board game or card game. And then the third category is a game that we could just write down mathematical details about and calculate certain traits about ideal strategies or outcomes or possibilities. Now, you could have a game that's all three. For example, the game chess is, we could say, all three of those. You have digital versions of chess. You have a board game version that you could bring on a camping trip or something. And you can do mathematical analysis on it. Now, chess is a good board game, but I did think that with a game I wanted to design, I have many ideas I have brainstormed for different games, and I figured maybe it's time to make a really cheap version of one that I could give to my fans so they could not only have fun playing it, but also maybe help me mathematically analyze it. And I figured a card game would be a good one to start with, because that's very portable, much easier to make. It's something that perhaps I could actually get printed in the next year. I don't think I could get a board game printed in the next year. And so I figured, okay, if I'm making a card game, and I want to hit a few different of those three traits, which were sort of, let's have it work in a digital sense later, but let's have it for now work as a physical game as well, that could, be something that you could bring in a little pack somewhere of cards. And let's also have it be something that can be mathematically analyzed in an interesting way. And I'll get to the specific type of mathematical analysis I wanted out of it in a moment. First, what I'll note is what are some games that I did want it to include sort of traits of. First, I was inspired partially by the game Magic: The Gathering. Some of the games I've designed have that sort of structure. Not that they have the same rules by any means. They don't have, the same card types or turn structure, stuff like that. But the overall structure of a game like Magic: The Gathering is that different sets are put out at different times, and players are able to not just have a single game. Like chess is sort of always the same game that's just complex enough we still haven't solved it. But there's a lot of different games in Magic based on which deck this person built out of the possible cards, which deck this person built, and how those interact. Now, it does have randomness as well, because the cards are shuffled, so that's a little different. But in general, it sort of has a lot of different possible games in one. And some of the games that I designed in sort of a more future optimistic sense, maybe someday I'll be able to print this, were of that sort. A set of cards that I would be able to add to later, and then you would pick which ones of those you wanted to use. But that's a sort of grandiose goal for a first starting game. I wanted at least something, whether or not you could build off it in that way, that could function on its own. Whereas with Magic, just to give one example that I pulled up of what a card is kind of like nowadays and how complicated a single card's interactions can turn out. One of the most powerful Magic sets was, not necessarily one of the most powerful, but one of the more powerful types of sets was recently released. They used to make overpowered cards back in the day, and I've made one episode on my Combo Class channel that was really long about what the most overpowered cards were ever, in my personal opinion and calculations. And nowadays they're safer, but they still mess up sometimes, and a lot of the times they mess up when they're pushing, like, extra powerful cards, and one that's too extra powerful slips through the cracks, and they may have to ban it in some formats of play later. Are these like straight to certain formats, like straight to modern sets, modern being a format of which types of cards you're allowed to play, a certain era of cards apart from a ban list. And they started making these sets called Modern Horizons that are like extra overpowered and they only just go for the modern thing. And those are full of cards that now a lot of the players of that, I think, I haven't played the paper game or a digital version of it in a while. I've just done calculations of what would be fun, interesting decks and what mathematical traits there are and stuff. But so maybe if any of you have extra money to blow, I'll give you a cool deck lists that I invented and you can make the decks because I'm not going to actually buy the cards for them, at least not now. And one example of the newest card in Modern Horizons 3 that is very likely to be banned, but doesn't look that scary at first, but turns out to be way overpowered for the format that contains more than 10,000 cards. This is going to be one of the 100. It hasn't been banned yet, but I would bet money that this will probably be banned based on the decks you can put together with it. And it's a very unassuming type of card. The way a Magic card works is you got your cost. This one costs 3 total, 1, a green, and a blue. You got your name, you got your types, you got, if you're a creature, you got a power of how much you can attack for and or deal damage for, and a toughness, kind of how much health it has in a way. And this happens to have this ability that, oh, all your creatures have this somewhat complicated seeming ability. After printing tens of thousands of cards, they've evolved, they want to make them unique still. And this one doesn't seem like one of the super overpowered broken cards. It's like, okay, your creatures have this ability that if it's a target of something, then you reveal this thing and do that. But this ability only triggers twice each turn. Now, normally, a lot of decks run on an infinite combo, and we like combos around here. And those are when you can not actually go infinite. It's sort of a misnomer, but you can go into an arbitrarily large amount of some cycle happening. Like, you net some cycle that gets you back where you started, but you've dealt a damage or gained a life or made a creature bigger. And so you can loop that an arbitrary number of times. And this can't do that because it only triggers twice each turn. But it turns out that this really old card and a few cards like this that was worth like no money back in the day, now it says worth $12. And this probably was worth like 10 cents or something before that other card was printed. It's a really older card. And like this from the era when I originally played. I probably had one of these and traded it away or gave it away because it seemed like nothing because I didn't know that bird thing was going to come out. But this can equip for 0, so it can target stuff for 0. And it turns out if you build your deck right, as soon as you get this cheap guy out and the other cheap guy out, you can just keep flinging out creatures and lands and you will almost definitely get your entire deck out and be able to have any number of ways you can win once you've drawn your whole deck and had a million lands put out. But you can't guarantee it, so your opponent kind of has to watch you go through this really long cycle. And it's another reason it might be banned is that not just that it's too powerful, but that it is apparently really annoying to play against because you can't just forfeit because your opponent might not win off the combo, but you just kind of have to watch and you're like, okay, they're probably going to win off the combo and just let them do this long thing, which is fun for this player, but sort of like them playing solitaire in a way. And so mark my words, this card will probably be the next one banned, but this is just an example of how one card will connect with another of 10,000 different cards, and it becomes very complicated to have a network of cards that work together and plan on expanding it in any way, make the new ones interesting, not just inherently better, and not have some interaction that's just way too good. So that is a fun challenge I've always liked, of having a network of a deck that could build and expand. But I also wanted it to be simple enough that you could have a single starter deck and using just the normal deck, you could play against someone else. And in fact, I didn't even want you to have 2 decks like Magic. I almost wanted it to have traits of one other game, which is Uno, or card games like this. I don't know if you've played this or other simple card games where a lot of the cards are copies of each other, like there's probably multiple red 4s, or they're at least similar to the blue 4s. And you get this deck that you play with another player. Now, this is a game that's relatively simple. I haven't looked into if it's been like solved or whatever. It couldn't be solved in the same way chess could because it has randomization, it's shuffled, but you could prove many things about its different configurations. And I'm sure that you could prove a lot about it because it's a relatively simple game. And I didn't want to make a game this simple, but I liked the idea and the vibe of a game like this as a kid, where it's just like you only need one deck. Relatively simple rules. You could play with 2 people, maybe even with more people. And the cards are relatively simple and digestible even to look at. So I wanted some, elements of something like Uno and some elements of something like Magic. But I also wanted a trait that chess had. And the trait that chess had is that it is solvable under what's called Zermelo's theorem in game theory. This is because chess is a 2-person game where each player knows all the details about what the other knows, where it's a fixed configuration to begin, where it has a finite length because they have rules that you cannot loop certain things infinitely in certain ways, and that there's no randomization is similar to the setup. There's no randomization in the middle either. There's a fixed set of moves you can do. And with those traits and maybe some other subtle ones that you'd expect of chess that I forgot to mention, we can prove that it's either the first person has some strategy tree that is so complex, couldn't even fit in the universe, of all the responses to the second player's moves, that no matter what the second player does, the first person knows the right way to branch that tree somehow and respond to it, that the first person guarantees they'll win. Or the second player can do that, and the second player can guarantee a win. Or that either player can guarantee a tie. So it has to be one of those 3. Now, we may never know which one chess is. We'll see. I don't know. Maybe there's an alien out there who knows, but they don't know the whole strategy tree. That would not fit. Now, chess has that trait. Uno and Magic don't for a few reasons. The randomness and stuff like that. The secret information, like hidden hands. So I figured if my game's going to have that, even if it's going to have cards, it's almost going to be reminiscent of a board game. It's going to have a fixed setups. But now I started to think, hey, what about this idea? What if instead of just one fixed board of how the cards begin laid out? And in this game, it has now become that I wanted every bit of information face up. Players can see what's going to be next in the deck, which is sort of a tree-like structure of deck that I'll explain when the time's right. And players can see what's in each other's hands. And that sounds like it would make it too easy to respond to things, but trust me, this game is going to have really complex strategy. With simple rules is the goal. The simpler rules and complexer strategy is the goal. And the other goal is I wanted it to fit Zermelo's theorem. I just thought that would be cool and interesting for my mathematical analysis of it and just how I wanted the game to be. And so this is no longer a lot of my weird grandiose ideas about a Magic the Gathering-esque game or other ideas I'd had. This relates to various game thoughts I'd had about numberation cards, where your cards do things like double a number that exists somewhere, or square a number that exists somewhere, or subtract 3 from a number that exists somewhere. And there are various ways in which I thought this game could work, but once I figured out how to make it work with face-up hands and this face-up deck structure, it became even cooler. But the final piece to the puzzle, I'm not going to explain all the rules today, because, there will be time for a full episode about that as I get closer to designing these cards. I'm actually going to start graphic designing what the cards look like. And it is the type of thing where a starter deck will work, but you could add more cards too. I might even put blank cards in, so you could design your own. And the last kind of key to the puzzle was that I realized instead of having one fixed setup for how the cards start out spread up, none of the fixed setups I thought of felt like perfect or like the only one that would be right. I was like, instead of one fixed setup, you could have recommended setups with nicknames. Like this one's called the Starter Cave. You could play the Starter Cave if you want that setup of a map. And with that map, you could, if you're just playing a fixed map, you could, randomly decide who goes first or second. And one of those players may be able to force a win if they somehow knew a perfect strategy tree, or maybe either player could force a tie. But then I realized, what if you allow different sorts of map structures of how the deck is arranged? This will be more clear when I show physically with the cards someday, but you could imagine this almost with chess or other games as well. What if you allow different setups of all the visual information of how the game starts? Basically, like what is going to be next and what parts of the deck, if players start with anything in their hands, if any other zones start with anything, all the information is out there. And what if one player designs the map and the other player decides if they want to go first or second? So then theoretically, the player who didn't design the map, if they were a perfect robot, would be able to always win or force a tie, because they could gauge the map, study it, and figure out, well, player 2 is the one you want to be here, and they get to pick that. But you could also have fun sort of designing a map that you got to know, that you're like, this is a map I do on my friends, let's see if they can ever beat me on it. Maybe they'll try player 1, maybe they'll try player 2 next. Maybe you design maps that are sort of traps that look like you want to be player 1 there, but you don't actually. And exactly how that works with my game I'll explain later, but I thought it's a kind of interesting concept for games in general. What if you did that with chess? One player sets up an arrangement of the board, and the other player decides if they want to be white or black. So, interesting thought, how you could apply, turning one game into many games. You could even do that with something like Uno if you just had, well, maybe not if you have to shuffle it, but a game like Uno that you didn't have to shuffle in the middle of the game, you could start with the deck ordered and face up, and one person orders the deck and the other person decides if they want to go first or second. But in general, that would work better for some games than others. I'll explain more about the game I'm developing later, but I am actually going to make it. It will be very fun, and it will be based on my numberations. And like I said, one of my main goals is, how simple can I make this thing with it having really complicated strategy and following enough of these mathematical, like precise mappings, like it will follow Zermelo's theorem, that I will continue to be interested in studying the results of things. I have tried to prove with very small maps involving like 6 cards if there'd be a first or second person win. And the game's complicated enough that even with like 6 cards, it took a long time for me to prove which player would do it. And I could not get started on trying to do it with like 10 cards in a map. And most of the maps would have more cards than that anyway. So it would, be closer to the lines of chess than checkers, in that I don't expect people will be able to solve most of the maps. But I think it's an interesting concept for players to, if you are at a tournament, for example, each player presents a map they have designed, and the other player picks if they want to go first or second. And maybe you win the round if you have won both of the two or something. Now, one last thing is I wanted this game to work with no exterior counters needed. You don't need dice, you don't need marbles, nothing like that. The cards themselves within the different game zones, which cards are where, tells you everything you need to know about how many points you have, what's in your hand, this and that. You don't need, a dice or a this or a that. So, that was a nice long rant about that game. And let me go back to chat with our comments for a little bit. So, somebody mentioned about sphere packing. It's about a lot more than that, but sphere packing does show up in a sense there. Somebody mentioned the novel Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut, which I highly recommend as well. Really great book. Kurt Vonnegut is perhaps my favorite fiction author, or at least one of my top 5 favorite fiction authors. And now, lots of interesting comments. Sorry I can't answer all of them. I am going to wrap up a little under an hour today. I don't have a huge amount of energy for this, but like I said, a lot of fun stuff will be coming that is pre-filmed, and now I'm going to kick myself in the butt to, whenever my technology is working correctly, pre-upload them. Now, somebody said Magic was created, the game, by a math PhD major. I think that's correct. Richard Garfield, I believe, was a PhD, and he did study a lot of mathematical things. He designed other games as well, and he certainly, while there are many other game designers and people who have held down the game surviving 30 years, he was only one of the main designers at the beginning. He was the one who created a lot of interesting concepts. The game Magic, while there are other games that could be similar, a lot of its things were great, like the flavor, the 5-color wheel and their relationships, certain abilities they had at the beginning, like flying and trample, and the way creature combat worked, instants versus sorceries. A lot of these things were very creative for game design. Whoever said they have an alpha lightning bolt, that is probably worth a lot of money. I have some old beat up cards, but none of them are that old, and I used to trade cards and share them with friends and stuff, and I'm pretty sure none of the cards I have are worth more than like $3 or $4, but maybe sometime I'll go through them. Now, somebody said they wonder if someone's used AI and a database of Magic card descriptions to come up with amazing combos no one's found. I mean, you could do that, but the thing is there are so many Magic players dedicated to finding things that there's probably a human player who has found the combo. People love looking for that stuff and building decks and stuff, and if you find a combo, you can probably look up like decks based around that and find tons of people's ideas. Now, lots of other interesting fun ones. Somebody said a classic sandwich sharing strategy is similar. The first person cuts the sandwich and the second person decides which piece they want. Excellent strategy. I do have to note, me and one of my friends found arguably an even better way to split up things. Let's say you have something smaller that's like a more granular thing that could be divided back and forth, like you're splitting up a bunch of small pieces of candy or something, and you're not sure which pile's bigger. What you could do is you make 2 piles, then at the same time, and I will note that the strategy they shared is great too. First person cuts, second person picks, classic. But this is just one that me and my friend came up as a variation on that I think is underrated or underutilized, is at the same time, you each point at which pile you want. If you point at different piles, you are both extra satisfied. You both think, personally, that you won, that you got the better one. Or, if you both point at the same pile, you both agree that pile's bigger, you move a little bit from that pile to the other pile, and then you go like 3, 2, 1, point again. And once, eventually, you'll point at different piles. And when that happens, it's not even that like both people are satisfied. Both people are more than satisfied. They both think they got the better share. So that's an interesting one. I'll have to nickname that strategy sometime. Somebody mentioned the ham sandwich theorem is an actual name for a mathematical theorem. I kind of want to do an episode someday just about all of the math theorems named after strange foods. We'll have to do that in the kitchen with the foods. And somebody asked how much time in my game would you get to choose first or second position. That would really depend. In a casual game, I would say you give them about a minute. I would say in a tournament, maybe there's a timer, maybe depending how big the map is. Because, you know, if with the game I'm going to send out to start for people who want to buy the cheap pack of cards, it's going to be more than enough. Like, you could lay them all out in a map, but you could also just lay out a section of them. You could not use all of them. You don't have to use squared and square root in your map if you don't want, because you're going to have more than enough of them. And so, depending how big the map is, might depend on how long you'd get. I'm thinking if you were in a tournament, your map would have about 36 cards, and you'd get about 2 minutes to say if you want to go first or second. I don't know. I also was thinking, to get around players wanting to design a map that they know they can respond in a way that forces a tie. Like they design a small enough map they've somehow memorized the tree for. They couldn't do that with a big enough one, I don't think, but with a small enough map, to get around that, you might say possibly that if you're doing the type where one person designs and the other person picks, maybe ties are considered a win for the player who picked, who didn't design the map. Perhaps when you design the map to win, you have to win, and if you don't win, the other person gets the point. That's one thought I had. There will be many variations. That will be one of the that's one of the crucial parts of me designing how I want to put out this game to start, is not just which cards I want to include and how I want them to look graphically, but also what I'm going to include in the little rule book. The rules will be simple, but I want to include a lot of variations, and I'll see how many fit. Now, somebody said maybe one side of the card could be used to create the map, the opposite side could be the numerations. You could do them face down in that sense if you wanted to have randomness at play, not have it involve Zermelo's theorem, and that's certainly a way you could play the game. There will even be ways to play the game where you're not even using a map, you just use a shuffled deck. But if you want it to follow the Zermelo's theorem, we can't have any hidden information, which is just what I happen to be going off for the main version. Plenty of variations won't have that trait where you're guaranteed that, you know, every card's face up or this or that. Now, lots of great comments. I am going to probably wrap up once we hit an hour, which is pretty soon. So I guess we will make it to an hour. It is, as some other notes, a nice season around here. It's very dark, but soon you'll see some more footage in the next episodes that I've filmed around my yard and other cool places of some cool plants and wildlife. There will even be a section in the finale in particular about cool plants and animals that were not a main part of one of the episodes or didn't even get in at all, but did show up in the footage of some sort of behind the scenes, because we get some cool plants and animals here. And out there in the yard that I share with some other houses, there is some really nice fruit right now. There's some apples coming into ripeness. There are some figs starting to come into ripeness. There's some tomatoes we planted, just like a new thing of tomatoes. They grow really easily here. They came up pretty quickly, so those will be cool if they succeed. And some other random fruits and things. And it's just really nice out there. As you know, there are my 3 cats who I love. And you want to see one last cool thing for the live stream. You know, my 3 cats? Well, you thought maybe you didn't get a cat meow in this live stream. Didn't get a cameo. Not even like a picture of the cats. That's sad. No visitors this time. But maybe we do have a picture of the cats before us all along. You know, my 3 cats, the fluffy dandelion, the nice silky elegant sage, and the little silky stray who's now a member of the family, sassafras, who looks like sage, but he has a clipped ear from the vet, does that when they pick up strays sometimes. Well, turns out that all along, these critters were hiding in my coat. No, they are on my shirt. It's just an image of them, but we get a little cat meow of some form or another. These are my 3 cats. Yes. So, love those guys. When I go inside, I'm sure I will be petting some of them. And I love all of you. Sorry that I have not been very connected to the combo community, to those who are on the Discord or stuff like that. Recently, I haven't been doing hardly any online social media stuff apart from when I post here, but I am going to get back into that because I do love our combo community. So remember, there is a Discord and subreddit and stuff, and I am excited to get back to posting some more of these new shorts, as well as the next main combo class episode, which will be coming out some point during this week. And hope you all enjoyed our random stream. Hope you all have been enjoying your July, and I love you all. We will catch up again in a live stream before long, although the next content may be some more pre-filmed things. And then we got a few more episodes, and then I can cut this hair and get a new desk and stuff. But right now, we are reveling in the disheveled chaos era. And sometimes, you gotta let it go as long as it wants to go. So, thank you all for joining me. I think an hour is a good enough time for now. Last comment I'll answer before here is somebody said they hope I'm enjoying having chickens. I'm sorry to say I don't own chickens yet. The classroom chicken, which is ceramic, is around there somewhere, but the chickens that were in some of the recent videos I did not own. Unfortunately, those were on a trip I was on. There was a lot of wild chickens. So it's out on the island Kauai I was able to visit. If you want to see about that, check out my episode Crazy Coconut Chronicles. But in a few other episodes, in addition to that and that one, and in more footage that is yet to come, there's more footage with those chickens you haven't seen yet. Those are unfortunately not my chickens. They were wild chickens who were just really nice. So someday I'll own chickens, but chickens would not be good here in the classroom with me. I wouldn't have the time or energy to give them the right space and happiness here. Someday when I live in the middle of the woods somewhere and we have a combo castle with a bunch of wild space, then we'll get some chickens of our own. All right. And no worries for the person who asked that said they were sorry to assume. All good. You can make assumptions of me having pets after, I have at least 3 of them. But the chickens will come later. Now, good night, everybody, or morning, or whatever time zone you're in.